We'll get started then, guys. Thank you very much for attending this afternoon's webinar. Based on July's webinar, we had great success on numbers, so really thought it was a really good idea to try and get one in for the end of the term. We've got a bit of a rogues gallery today. We've moved up one extra individual from the landscape in Birmingham. My name's Jim Morris. I work as Development Manager for Youth Sport Trust and do a lot of work with PESP on the PE School Sport Physical Activity work. We've got Jane Pillar with us from Sport of Birmingham. I know most of you might know. We've also got Helen Tonks from PE at Home. We've got Sam Payne from the Daily Mile, Hannah Reid, School Games Organiser at Hall Green, and then we've got Matt Rickard, also School Games Organiser from Colmers. Each one will take a separate section as we move throughout. There's some really great updates to come over this next hour. If you've got any questions as we go throughout, if you want to ask any questions verbally on the webinar, that's absolutely fine. If I can just ask you to wait till the end of each individual section. However, if you've used the chat function at on the bottom icon, please do populate that chat function as we go throughout. The team and myself will be monitoring that chat function as we go throughout, so don't hesitate to put something in there, because based on last July's webinar, there was quite a lot of content and questions that came throughout that chat function. If I can ask you to keep your microphones muted, just avoid any background noise, and obviously do feel free to keep your camera on or off. I know some people are in different environments, so do whatever suits you best. Without further ado, we're going to start with Jane.
Thanks, Jim. If you can go on to the first slide, please. Okay, hi everybody. 3 areas I'd like to cover today around the PE and Sport Premium funding is key information. Make sure you're all up to date on the information from last year and for this year as well. Secondly, around how effectively your school is using the funding on impact on our young people. And thirdly, just to question whether your school is meeting the conditions of the funding and Ofsted requirements. So hopefully 10 minutes you'll have a quick whistle-stop tour and hopefully cover those 3 particular areas. Next slide, Jim, please. Quick reminder then, folks, we've had this funding now for 7 years. We've been very, very fortunate. So every school has had around about £100,000 worth of funding for PE school sport and physical activity. And as you know, the funding ranges depending on the size of your primary school. But I'd like to just pose this question to you as a teacher, head teacher, PE lead, coach. What does £100,000 worth of impact look like in terms of PE, school sport and physical activity? Just a question to pose to you to start with. Next one, Jim, please. Quick reminder then on the funding. Hopefully you should all know this, but a reminder that it is to make additional and sustainable improvements to the quality of PE, school sport and physical activity. Remember, the premium is used to develop or add or build capacity and capability within the school to ensure that improvements made now will benefit pupils joining the school in future years. So just a quick reminder, the plans that you're putting on the system shouldn't be the same as last year or the previous year. We're looking to develop or add and have new ideas, new initiatives, new areas to work on. Next one, Jim, please. Hopefully you should all know this, but a very quick reminder. 3 areas you can't use the funding. This is the same as it has been the last couple of years. Firstly is the PPA cover. So I know some of you do use coaches within the school, which is fine, but make sure they're not used in PPA cover if the teacher leaves the room. Secondly, around swimming. Remember, you all have a pot of money for swimming anyway. So this shouldn't replace that money, but great use of money could be around top-up swimming, etc. And the third one, which often causes a lot of debate, is around capital expenditure. So you shouldn't be using it for any capital funding projects, but the Dialogue within DFE says that school business managers, school accountants and auditors are best placed to advise on a school's agreed capitalisation policy. So just check on that before you make a decision regarding that third point. Requirements then, remember, it's got to be on the website by next year, the 31st of July. And the main areas you should have, and again, it's been the same for the last few years, must publish the amount, a breakdown, the impact, the sustainability, and also the sewing data. What I would say here though, good schools are now putting their 2021 plans on the website now. You should hopefully, most of you have an idea what you want to spend your money on over the next 12 months. So please put your draft plans on the website as soon as you can. They can be added to, updated, amended, etc. moving forward. Next one, Jim, please. Underspend, again, quick reminder, the government, because of COVID, 2019-20, your funding can be carried forward. But a key point here is any underspends need to be spent in full by the 31st of March. So please ensure that for any money you've underspent in the 19-20 year. Next one, Jim, please. This is a new template. Hopefully you've all received it. If you haven't, please let me know. It is on the Youth Sport Trust website and the Sport Birmingham website. This is a recommended template for putting your spend on. Very, very similar to last year. It's very, very similar. The only difference is now there is a section around putting your aims and money spend for the underspend from 19-20. So very similar to before, just a separate section now on the underspend. So please. Oops, not sure what that was, but so that's the ideal template for good practice for putting your plans on. Next one, Jim, please. Again, the 5 outcomes, should all be familiar with this. You can use any initiative, but as long as it maps in with one of the 5 outcomes, the 60 minutes and or profile of PE, confidence of staff, broader range of experience or competition. Remember, you don't have to do plans to meet all 5 of them. Do a quick audit. Where are your gaps? Where can you spend the money? You may spend all the money on 60 minutes. You may want to spend all the money on CPD, competition, or a range of things. So as I say to every school, look at your gaps. PE Schools premium funding can be used to fill those gaps and add value. Next one, Jim, please. Key, Ofsted, you're all familiar with the new framework. I think that's quite a good slide to really show PE school sport and physical activity, how much it can link into so many of those particular areas around the judgments. So look at your spend, how does it map in, how can we link in with the Ofsted framework? Hopefully you can see some clear gaps in the schools that you work with and how you can link with the Ofsted framework. Thanks, Jim. Top tips then for spending. Hopefully you've all seen this again. It has been distributed around. It's a document that's been developed by a number of partners, including the Association for PE. And again, it's on the key websites, but there's a number of areas there that they've given ideas for how to spend the money. And I won't read those all out. Hopefully those are all self-explanatory. But those are indicating some key areas that potentially you could spend your money on if you're struggling. Thanks, Jen. Finally then, it's a really check and challenge question really, and I think this is key to finish off my presentation, and I'll go through these just very quickly. Ask yourselves, if you're looking at the PE school sport premium funding, why has it, or why is the school undertaking a particular activity? Why are you doing what you're doing? Have you done a self-review or an audit? Secondly, make sure your quality assurance and safeguarding policies are in place. Thirdly, have the activities been monitored and evaluated? And what evidence do you have? Number 4, key, has the school made a difference? What are you doing with the money? What's the impact on those pupils, not just in participation, but in lots of areas as well. 5, is it sustainable? We're very lucky to have this money for a further 12 months. Not sure what's going to happen after, you never know, but please make sure the majority, if not all, of the activities you've chosen to spend your money on are sustainable. And the final one, swimming, it's a very key area at the minute, great area to spend your money on. Has the school sufficient information to report on swimming? Are you getting your school pools to give you the data on 25 metres, etc.? Thanks, Chip. Lots of useful website addresses. I'm conscious I've given you a whistle-stop tour. I think most of you know me, but there's a lot of website addresses on there around the key agencies, the government website, Sport Birmingham, AFPU Sport Trust, Sport England. Lots of useful information. So if you need anything and you can't get hold of me, there's lots of information on there for you to go to if needs be. Final one, Jim, please. So really, it's a thank you for listening. I say it is a whistle-stop tour. A lot of you do know a lot on this area already. Some may be new and hopefully have picked up a couple of points. But thank you for listening. Any questions? That's my email address and my phone number. So if you need me to speak through any of your plans, just give me a shout. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Jane. We've got one question that's coming from Zara, and not to open a can of worms about swimming, but the question is swimming data related. The question is swimming data still going to be taken into account? Because obviously schools won't be attending swimming as much this year.
Sorry, Jim, I didn't quite hear that. Could you?
The question's about school swimming, in terms of the data being reported.
Okay, I think what DFE and the main agencies are saying is on your plan, just be honest. So if it is a different year group or if the information isn't up to date, just make a note on your plan to say this is year 5 data or this is year 6 data or we haven't updated the figures. So I think it's just an honesty statement on there, because I gather a lot of schools do swimming in the summer term, which was obviously affected by COVID. So just an honest statement of where you're at as a school.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Also do consider for that swimming data that it is just the year 6s that you should be reporting on. Your year 6s might swim in their year 4, so you should be reporting that data from their year 4, which means you probably might have the data as they leave year 6. So potentially we might not see a massive impact on swimming data being reported until maybe next year, where this year's disruption is actually seen in data in the last couple of years. But as Jane said, just be honest. If you do want any more advice on that, just do get in touch with Jane. So I'd like to introduce Helen Tonks from PE at Home.
Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jim says, my name is Helen Tonks. I'm the SGO at King Edward in Aston, but also proudly part of the PE at Home team as well, with 2 of my other colleagues, Ange Whitehouse, who's the senior lecturer at BCU, and Sarah Lay, who's a PE consultant. So today my bit really is in 3 parts. A bit of an update as to where we are at the moment. If you were on the last webinar, you'll be quite familiar with some of the resources that we've been posting. And if you weren't, hopefully I'll be able to introduce some of those to you today. And then also 2 packages that we've brought together to try and support schools as we go through this difficult period. So next slide, Jim, please. So just a bit of feedback really from where we started and to where we are now. If you haven't seen the resources, PE at Home really was born out of the fact that we went into the first lockdown, and we were looking very much to sustain physical activity with young people whilst they were at home, particularly with their family. I work in an area with high deprivation, socially and economically, which is sort of highlighted with the bright blue colours on the map to the left of the screen. And I know Sarah and Angela also work in similar areas. So for us, it was really important to produce something that families could use together at home with their young people. So from April, we started to produce our resources. We now have 15 weeks of PE at home cards for Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 4. They're all very much born out of delivering PE and physical activity in an isolated environment, so at home, and they mirror the concept of a PE lesson. We've also got signposting to other clubs that young people could go to, as well as cross-curricular content with subjects that they will be studying at school. So currently there are 74 cards. They are still free to download on the King Edward's website. So that's www.kessp.com. If you go onto the PE at home page, you can still download those. The initial concept really of the cards was to, as I say, use them at home. But since students have returned to school in September, their use has changed slightly. Whilst they're still being used by many families, not just in Birmingham, but wider afield as well, we know that lots of schools are now using them within the school environment with the bubbles that are currently in schools. And they're being used as a sort of start point for possibly NQTs and staff to use to gain a little bit of insight into different areas of the curriculum. So they're very much being used alongside the curriculum that's already in place in those schools. And then interestingly as well, and something which we didn't foresee, was those cards being used in higher education. So Ange this afternoon has been speaking to students from Roehampton University and using them as a way to explain how a physical education lesson should be planned. And they've also been used at BCU as well. So the upshot from those resources in the summer were that we've had 58,000 downloads across 106 countries in the world, which obviously wasn't foreseen. It was very much a Birmingham-based resource, but it has sort of gone wider than that. We also, just very briefly, have a Christmas Advent calendar out at the moment. So again, you can download that from the King Ed's website. It's interactive, it's also printable, and we have some activity cards on there that you can go and download for free. So off the back of that, and sort of talking to schools, we've developed two packages that we'd like to introduce you to today. And they're very much born out of the research that we've got back from different schools. The first one is a primary PE NQT training package. And this it sits alongside Key Indicator 3, which Jane talked about with the primary PE sport funding for this year. And the idea is that schools came back to us and said that lots of their NQTs missed that chunk of training before they started their employment in September of this year. So what we have put together is a 3-part training package for NQTs. The bit in the middle has slightly changed. So part 1 will start in the spring of 2021 when we come back after Christmas. It's a 3-hour virtual introduction to delivering physical education and high quality PE lessons. We know that lots of staff can't come out of school at the moment, so that's why that's been done virtually. Part 2, which will be the summer of 2021, will be a full day of training, and we'll be looking at how to structure a PE lesson, looking at the different areas of the national curriculum, looking at how to progress and how to recognise progression in lessons, as well as being able to differentiate different areas and different activities. That all comes along with an NQT training file that staff can then go back into school and share with other members of staff. And then part 3 is looking at following up in September what's happened for the rest of this year and supporting that NQT into the second year of their employment in that school. Just to answer the question that's just popped up, if there are members of staff in your school that would benefit from that package and they're not NQTs, they are more than welcome to join in on that as well. If you'd like more information on that, you can email us at peathome1@gmail.com, but all the information is going to be on our Twitter feed as well, so you can access that there. Next slide, Jim, please. And then this is our second sort of package that we've put together. It's very much in the ethos of PE at home being a theory that's sort of bound up in family and physical activity. We know from the Youth Sport Trust research that 71% of young people reported being more active with their families in lockdown. And this hopefully will build on that positive message of family physical activity. It also touches upon the 60 active minutes agenda. We know loads of schools are doing lots and lots of great stuff with young people in schools. But when those young people go home, they may not be as active as schools would like. There are 4 options with this package. It's very much packaged to be sent home to parents. So we are at the moment developing an electronic resource and parent videos, which is option 1, which we will send to schools, and they will have the ability then to send that to every family within their school. And those are ideas on how to stay active at home. Option 2 is a recorded support video for parents. All the cards are printed out, so they can be sent directly home, and they come in a nice branded PE at home bag. Option 3 is the same as option 2, but we're also providing equipment, simple equipment to use at home, along with an additional set of cards, which will really focus on how to use those pieces of equipment with different activities at home. And then option 4 is having an on-site delivery by one of the PE at home team, either for one class for half a day, or for 2 classes, which comes with an assembly which will be run by one of the PE at home team. And that package really focuses on key indicator 1, so that's the 60 active minutes agenda, and trying to get young people as active as possible. As I say, all the information is on the PE at home Twitter page. The email is on your screen at the moment. So if you want to get in contact and you've got people in your school that are NQTs or staff that want to access the NQT course, or you think that families within your school will benefit from the family physical activity support package, please get in touch, even if it's just additional questions that you might have. I think that's everything from me, Jim.
That's great, thanks, Helen. If anybody has any questions for Helen, do pop them in the chat, and she can answer them as we introduce our next speaker. New to our Rogues Gallery for Birmingham, I'd like to introduce Sam Payne, the Daily Mile local coordinator who sits within Sport Birmingham.
Hi everybody, great to see so many familiar faces and school names on this call, and I know that a lot of you will already know what the Daily Mile is, and a lot of you on this call are already doing the Daily Mile. So I'm going to use this presentation really as a chance to refresh for those that do it, and a chance to showcase some of the resources that we have and the slight amendments that we've made kind of during COVID. But I guess before I jump in, I wanted to acknowledge just the fact that you guys as schools have had a vast amount of very prescriptive information lately, and that's all been very important, I think, in the midst of keeping children and staff members safe in a global pandemic. But I sympathise with how challenging and exhausting that must be for you guys as schools, and I want to just reiterate that the Daily Mile or any active mile is not that really. There's no repercussions of you doing or not doing it, and I think it's a decision that you guys can very much make as a school, and this is one of many options out there to engage children in an active lifestyle within your school. So just bear that in mind, and I think, you know, whilst we as health practitioners, and I would advocate that you do it because of the proven health benefits in terms of academic attainment and obesity reduction and well-being, etc., that there's lots of ways to get children active. I think just in terms of what is the Daily Mile, I sometimes think the Daily Mile is misleading in its name, because it doesn't have to be daily, and it certainly doesn't have to be a mile. It is 15 minutes of physical activity, self-paced running or jogging as often as you can do it. The research suggests that 3 or more days a week is a bit of a benchmark of where the health benefits really start to kick in. So I tend to highlight that as a benchmark, but it's something that children don't have to use equipment for. It's not anything that children don't have to get changed for, and they don't have to change their shoes for. Some of the schools that I work with do, but others don't. It's where children run at their own pace, and it's a very social activity. And I think that social point's important. And a lot of the schools I've been working with, including some on this call, have really been using it as a chance to have an informal kind of walk and talk session with children as they come back from a school lockdown or come back from an isolation period, and just say, you know, a chance to check in on a welfare point of view of how children are doing without having a formal sit down and eye contact and things. It can be a really useful tool in that sense. It's best done during curriculum time, and I appreciate there's a lot of challenges within that curriculum period, but the idea there being is that it should be in addition to any physical activity that children may already get in break time or after school, etc. Next slide, please, Jim. There are some core principles there along the left that I'll kind of let you read through in your own time, but I wanted to highlight this map on the right here, and the eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed that the colours would have changed in between the last two slides. And that really is to highlight two things. Firstly, the growth of the Daily Mile in the kind of previous year, and the green houses on that map indicate schools that are registered to the Daily Mile. So we're now at 165 schools within Birmingham registered to the Daily Mile, and about a year and a bit ago we were at 34 schools. So there's a real energy happening with the Daily Mile at the moment. And the second colour is a less positive one, so to speak. It's the blue shaded areas, and that sadly depicts childhood obesity at year 6. And you know, for those of you that have had me in your school to do a staff CPD session and seen me show this slide before, you would notice that dark blue patch is growing year on year, and sadly is getting bigger, and it really highlights the importance of physical activity initiatives and health initiatives within this West Midlands area, specifically kind of in Birmingham. Next slide, please, Jim. So social distancing is an interesting one, and I think each of your school will have a very specific policy around social distancing and coronavirus. So I won't go into this in too much detail. What I will say is that there are some flashcards that are available to download via the link there that will be circulated after this presentation, and they're also available on the Daily Mile's website. And they've been birthed out of ideas that schools, including some on this call here, have kind of been doing to kind of counteract the social distancing point. And there's a few in there that you can read through in your own time, but to mention a couple, that the gold standard obviously of keeping children separate whilst running in the playground is to have 2 separate routes, and to have fewer children on each route, and to set children off at different intervals so that they're not as close together. But I appreciate, specifically in Birmingham and the city centre area really specifically, that becomes quite challenging, and playground space is in a very high demand. So there are other ideas around creating pit stop areas for children to stop and have a break, or creating parallel routes and setting children off in pairs that are quite useful to read through in terms of what other schools are doing. Next slide, please, Jim. So on to what I deem as the exciting bit, I think, and the resources that are available to you as schools. A lot of you will already have a A1 size printed map of the Commonwealth Challenge in your school. For those that don't, it is a free poster campaign that is a virtual journey from Australia, where the Commonwealth Games were previously, to Birmingham, where they obviously will be in 2022. The idea is that your school places a sticker or a cross on the map for every day that your school does the Daily Mile, and there are different milestone rewards to be earned along the way. So at day 10, we'll give you a route design kit and a big pack of chalk so your children can draw and design their own route in the playground. Then there's a banner, some wristbands, some pedometers, and an athlete visit at the end from a GB Commonwealth Games hopeful athlete. Just to acknowledge that the pandemic has been slightly challenging time for us to distribute those resources. It's proven a little bit difficult, but we are very much on top of that now. And we've got a new lady in our office who's helping with the distribution of those. So apologies if you've waited a little bit longer than anticipated. We're back on track now, so you should be getting your resources delivered out to you ASAP. Fab. Next slide, please, Jim. So alongside the poster campaign, then there is also this PDF that's available to download, and the idea is that you can easily cut and fold this A4 printout into a Commonwealth Challenge passport, which connects each location on the world map to the geography curriculum, and it allows children to learn facts about each country and answer questions about some of the countries as well, just as a way of encouraging cross-curricular links. Next slide, please, Jim. New to this kind of pandemic period, we've seen a real need for to encourage children to do physical activity at home, and what we've created is a Commonwealth Challenge at Home leaflet, which gives some guidance on how to be physically active at home, whether it's the Daily Mile or whether it's other activities. And it's basically a smaller version of the leaflet, which is incentivised with £350 worth of sports kit that any parent or carer can win for your school by being active at home and returning the completed leaflet to you as a teacher. So I'll come on to how to access all of these resources in a minute, but essentially we can send you a batch of however many you need for the number of parents and carers at your school, and you can distribute them out. And we've changed that slightly in the last couple of weeks since this slide was created, actually, to then make it really simple of whether it gives specific information for those who are isolating and perhaps can't go out of the house to do physical activity. So there's some nice ideas of how to be active in a living room space. Next slide, please, Jim. So, as I said, how to access these resources. It's all of the resources that I've mentioned are completely free to anybody who's signed up to the Daily Mile, which again is a free thing to do. The links there again will be circulated, and mainly there's an expression of interest form that you can fill out on the Sport Birmingham website, which essentially just lets us know which resources you need and how many of those resources you need, and we'll then get them out into the post for you as soon as possible. If you need specific contact from myself, then my email address is there. Sorry, I can see that it's covered up slightly, so again we'll circulate that. But also, you know, outside of the resources, in terms of my support, if you wanted me to come into your school and do a staff CPD session, as I mentioned earlier, to look at specifically your school and how to administer the Daily Mile in your space specifically, then that is something that we can certainly arrange. I also offer kind of one-to-one conversations with you as head teachers or PE leads to again discuss kind of the timetabling and how it can work within your school, as well as links to other curriculum activities as well. That's it from me. I think if there's any questions, I can't see the chat box, so Jim, you'll have to let me know.
Yeah, there is. Can you not get the chat function up? So there is a couple of questions.
Great. Yeah, I've got
in there. Yes, if you have a go at them. That's great, Sam. Thank you for that.
I'll answer those questions via the chat. Is that best, so we can pass on?
That's great. Thanks, Sam. Over to Hannah Reid, SGO from Hall Green School.
Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. If you attended the BEP webinar in the summer, this hopefully will be fairly familiar to you, but if you didn't, hopefully you will have seen the Birmingham School Games, either the logo on the left, or you will have heard your SGOs talking about it, and you may have even explored the website, the actual portal. The web address there is at the bottom. We are really, really proud to be endorsed by the United by Birmingham strand of the Commonwealth Games. So we're really, really proud of that. So I would encourage you to get involved. Again, just a very, very brief background, because I know some of you will know why we've created this virtual platform. But as we all know, summer of 2020 was pretty much a complete write-off, and we had to change the way that we were delivering things, and it was a real opportunity for us to reflect on what we were doing and how best to support yourselves, the schools and the young people that you all serve at a really difficult time. So we came up with a virtual platform whereby we can offer virtual challenges to schools. It is locally driven and it is a citywide offer. It is sustainable moving forward. So it was something that wasn't just created for the here and the now to address the issues within this COVID world, but it's something that we will be looking to use moving forward. And it is really flexible. So parents, young people can register themselves onto the actual challenge portal, or school teachers can register themselves and submit data for the activities and the challenges that they do. Thanks, Jim. So again, just a bit of a recap, this is what we did. So the image on the right hand side is a typical challenge page. They will all look the same, but with a different video and different content. The video is a demonstration of the activity, and the text on the right hand side is an explanation. Obviously, I'm not expecting you to read that. And then the box there addresses some of the variations that you can use for pupils with special educational needs and disabilities. Over the summer period, so starting from June the 1st, we ran 3 activities every week for 10 weeks across 10 different sports. It wasn't all about the physical activity. We included other elements as well, including the school games values and also some quizzes. So every week was a different school games value, and on the Tuesday of every week we sent out a value card and a video to complement that. So within our tennis week, as you can see there, we used the value of determination, and we used the Andy Murray winning Wimbledon the first time as to sort of showcase that. And then the quiz card came out on the Wednesday, again just a few questions and some fun facts about that sport. And then on the Thursday we posted the answers to that quiz, and that was every weekday for 10 weeks. We also were supported by national governing bodies of sport, as well as local clubs and international and national athletes. And as you can see from the example on the right hand side, that's Danny doing from Warwickshire, who some of you may know, who supported us within the cricket week. Thanks, Jim. So just a little bit of data here from over the 10 weeks that the challenges ran in the summer. The blue column is the number of registrations and the orange column is the number of submissions. Year 0 is reception, which started from about week 4, I think. So that one was particularly low. Again, it's interesting to see that we did have quite a high number of registrations, but when it came to submissions, that dropped significantly. But we've got to bear in mind, we did launch quite late into the summer term, June the 1st. So schools in the normal sense would be winding down anyway. And obviously we were in a COVID world. So there are multiple reasons why maybe that would drop off. But what is really positive moving forward is that we're having more schools engage and register within the challenges that we've set this half a term. So again, that's just a snapshot from the first 10 weeks, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Thanks, Jim. This is another graph. This is school engagement based on the number of pupils submitting results per week. So this is the 10 weeks. Week 1 was basketball, and the last 3 weeks, tri-golf, rounders and netball did fall into the school holidays. So that is as expected. Again, the graph is fairly even for the first few weeks, and as expected, it would tail off. Again, some things for us to consider. Are we doing the right activities? Were they suitable? Were they differentiated enough? Again, it's a small snapshot of a very short period of time in a very difficult world. So just to give you an idea of where we were with school engagement. Thanks, Jim. Again, I know this graph might be difficult to see, but you will notice that it goes up and down, up and down. Every week we tried to create a challenge that was primary focus, secondary focus, and one for SEN. So I would expect to see that there would be more engagement in some challenges because they were harder. However, cricket was the rebound catch activity, which Danny actually demonstrated was our most popular activity. And handball actually had the best average across the 3 challenges, which I suppose shows that they were fairly even and accessible to pretty much every pupil that did do them. One thing to know, although the numbers dropped off within the last 3 weeks, which fell during the summer holidays, it's really interesting to see that those columns actually stayed very, very even, which showed that there were kids still out there, families still out there, that were really valuing what we were doing and providing an opportunity for them to still stay involved. So that's actually a massive plus. Thanks, Jim. So sort of fast forwarding to date, this data is pretty accurate up until today. So we now have 5,500 users, of which 3,500 are young people. And we have engaged just under half of all the primary educational settings within Birmingham from the 1st of June, which is a massive achievement. We've also engaged new schools in the school games as a result of this, and we've also increased parental awareness of the school games. And my favourite quote, and it kind of sums the whole thing up for me and all of us SGOs, is that middle quote from a parent, that the challenges have had such a positive impact on their whole family throughout the lockdown period and after. And while stuck in at home, it gave their days meaning, focus and determination. And the children have maintained fitness they otherwise would not have discovered. And they've discovered new sports that they enjoy as a family. So that for me sums up the whole thing. And we've had a couple of quotes there from 2 primary schools who I think might be on this call. So thank you very much for your feedback on Twitter. And then the last comment there was from a secondary school student. So it showed that we had a massive reach, a massive impact from schools, parents and pupils. One thing to note that's not on this slide is we have had pupils who you would class as your more or most able take part in the challenges, but also those that are vulnerable, that looked after children. So it showed that we really were, you know, trying to get to every pupil across Birmingham. Thanks, Jim. So just to kind of sum up the future and how you can get involved, the challenges right now, because we were doing athletics and para-athletics for the first half of this term, and we've moved on to doing some multi-skills and multi-sport activities. The challenges and the activities are driven by schools. So we're not going to put something on if we don't think our schools are going to do it. So if you do have any ideas, please get in touch with your SGO and that can be fed back into us as a group. We are asking just for participation data. We don't need any results to any of the challenges that we are setting you because we don't want to make it any more difficult. We know you've got a lot going on. So if you can get involved in just 1, 2, 3 of the challenges, that would be great. And the only thing we need is to know how many pupils within year 1, 2, 3, etc. have done that particular challenge. The actual concept will remain in place for the foreseeable future. As I've already highlighted, we have engaged schools who have never done the school games activities, competitions before. So it shows there is a real need for something like this across the city. At the moment, all the challenges are individual, but we can move into team challenges, which will hopefully bridge the gap between moving from where we are now back into inter-school competition, which I think we're all keeping our fingers crossed might be the summer term, but you know. Parent staff challenges, parents and staff can get involved in these activities as well. It's not just for kids. So again, supporting that family unit. And just a little bit of data from our athletics and para-athletics challenges, which I know went out on Twitter, so I know some of you will know. But we did have just under 7,000 young people take part in across those 2 activities over the last sort of half term, which again is fantastic. The activity cards, which hopefully you will be familiar with, if not, please get in touch with your SGO because they do have them, can be sent home to parents. So I am conscious, we're all conscious that there are pupils still at home self-isolating. So you can print off these cards or send them home to parents. Again, you can give them to other teachers. So it's a resource that they can go out and do the activities with their classes if you wanted to. And again, we can't do this without your support. So if you've got any questions or if you've got any feedback around the portal, if you've been using it, I would love to hear your thoughts. We can only move things forward and make sure that it's fit for purpose with your input. So again, the address is on the bottom there. And if you can push it as much as possible within your schools and with your parents as well, we would really appreciate that. Thanks, Jim. And then just this final slide here, if you don't know already who your school games organiser is, there is some names on sort of the left and then the SGO email and our Twitter handles. And the area code is the code that you will need if you are registering an account on the school games portal. So please just make a note of that if you don't know already. And again, if you've got any questions, my email address is second on the list there, so please do get in touch. Thanks, Jim. Thank you very much.
Hannah. That's great. There is a couple of questions in the chat function. I think Helen's been rapid on answering one of them, but I think there's one that's still to do with that answer.
That's fine. I will go through that.
Thank you. Okay, bringing up our final speaker, I'd like to introduce Matt Rickard, SGO at Colmar area.
Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jim said, my name is Matt Rickard. I'm the Colmar area school games organiser, but I'm actually here today to present on behalf of the 11 school games organisers across the city of Birmingham. So you've obviously already met Hannah and Helen, who are both school games organisers. I'm another one of those, and then there's 8 more. Did my maths right there? Yeah, so there's 8 more school games organisers across the city. Yeah, one of our roles is to support schools in your mission to ensure that every young person achieves 60 active minutes of physical activity per day. And that's in line with the Chief Medical Officer's recommendations. I know you're all well aware of that. It's kind of what you do as PE coordinators or people working in education. So I'm really appreciative of your understanding already of this kind of area, encouraging 30 active minutes within the school, and obviously then supporting your parents and young people's homes with that additional 30 active minutes. But just kind of really today, it's about just kind of revisiting some of that and just providing a little bit of an overview of some of that work, the 60 active minutes work, and obviously we've touched on it as well throughout the sort of the previous presentations. You'll all no doubt be aware of the existing challenges around young people and their access to sport and physical activity and achieving 60 active minutes. But then there's also this big thing that's sort of happened over the last 8 to sort of 10 months and the effects of COVID-19. So on the screen there, you should be able to see a kind of a list of different effects that might have impacted your young people. Obviously, every young person is different, okay? We're all well aware that people will have been affected differently by this. But I just kind of around those, while you've got those on the screen, just wanted to just talk about a couple of sort of headline sort of key stats and bits of information. So Sport England found that only 19% of young people met the Chief Medical Officer's recommended 60 active minutes of physical activity during the first lockdown. So you know, that's obviously quite a shocking statistic around the kind of the nature of young people's what they were doing with their time during the lockdown. So there's some work there to be done to support young people as we come back into education. 43% of young people actually did less than 30 minutes, and 7% of young people didn't do any physical activity at all during the first lockdown. So obviously that's had an effect on them as young people, and obviously there's the impact then that has on those young people when they're in school. And just looking down that list sort of around that loneliness, social isolation, the anxiety, trauma, stress, Bernardo's found that 1 in 3 young people experience an increase in mental health issues, including stress, loneliness and worry during the lockdown period. And of course then there's the impact on education as well. So the lockdown has obviously has seen educational gaps widen across young people. Next slide please, Jim. Thank you. So we know that there's always been a challenge. You all know that there's been a challenge. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has obviously exacerbated some of those challenges. I just wanted to pick up on a few kind of key target groups there. Again, you'll all be well aware of these, but we know that girls are generally less active than boys. Disabled people are half as likely as non-disabled people to be active. Young people from low-income families are more likely to be inactive. And of course, then as young people get older and move on into secondary school, we see their activity levels decline. So we know that the challenge is there. Of course, we've then had this additional challenges and effect of COVID-19. So there's some work, obviously, that we can all do together to kind of encourage young people to be physically active. Next slide, please, Jim. I'm not gonna kind of stay too long on this because you know this is the reason that you're all here. You all know what the benefits of an active school are. You see it every day. You live it. You breathe it. You see the impacts that physical activity has on young people, whether it's you know, getting them ready to learn, whether it's making them happier young people, whether it's that leadership work that you're doing, and obviously the impacts of sport and physical activity on young people's attainment. So just a slide there really to kind of you know, just reinforce that really, and reinforce that you know all those things that you're doing, those great things that you're doing in school to keep young people active are obviously having an effect, and you'll see that for yourselves in the schools that you're working in. Just over the next few slides, just a couple of headline kind of points really from the Public Health England paper in 2014 called The Link Between Pupil Health and Wellbeing and Attainment, a briefing for head teachers, governors and staff in education settings. A nice catchy title. So you know, as we've just talked about, pupils with better health and well-being are likely to achieve better academically. Next one, please, Jim. We also know that effective social and emotional competencies are associated with greater health and well-being and better achievement. Next, please, Jim. The culture, ethos and environment of a school influences the health and well-being of pupils and their readiness to learn. And I think that's, you know, when we're talking about 60 active minutes, we're talking about building a culture within our schools that means that young people come to school and understand that physical activity is kind of a really key part of their school day, as well as then their home life. So I think that one's a really key sort of headline from that paper there. And the final headline there, a positive association exists between academic attainment and physical activity levels of pupils. And again, that's very similar to that first headline point that we just picked up. So really, really conscious that you guys are, you know, doing some fantastic work already, and that's one thing. Also really aware, as all SGOs are, of the challenges and priorities that your schools are facing, not just now, but at all times. But we understand that, you know, you as staff and your colleagues are working above and beyond to support your young people across school, not just in physical activity and PE, but you know, across the board, and in particular around that recovery curriculum. So we understand that, you know, schools are probably busier places than they've ever been. There's more challenges and more priorities to sort of address. But I think we've got an opportunity to use physical activity to address some of the challenges that we've discussed. Some of those kind of effects of COVID-19 that you'll be seeing in your young people. I think there's an opportunity there, as you'll know, as people that have got an interest in PE and school sport, there's an opportunity to address some of those challenges through physical activity. And so just around that opportunity, just a bit of data that's come from a YST study with YouGov. And that's 37% of children and young people now see sport and PE as more important to their lives than they did before lockdown. So actually, since the lockdown period, the first lockdown, young people actually want to do more physical activity. It may be not sort of that visible necessarily yet, or you might not have found that necessarily in your school, but there's opportunities to kind of engage young people. And the school day, as you know, is kind of wrapped around all these different elements, as you can see on the screen there. And some of those different times that we can kind of embed different elements of physical activity are there on the screen. So whether it's walking, buses, cycling, or using the daily mile to get to school, whether it's those clubs, breakfast and after school clubs, and actually the government are really keen for those to continue, and that's obviously in the latest update from the government. There's the classrooms, which we'll touch on in a moment, around sort of active lessons, that cross-curricular link, and then there's the active breaks as well, making sure young people are active in the classroom, and then of course there's the break times and lunch times where you're providing opportunities for young people to be active. Next slide, please, Jim. So what I want to do now, just for the last couple of minutes, is just kind of touch on a couple of examples, some ideas that might help you in your quest to provide 60 active minutes for young people, or at least the 30 active minutes that schools are kind of encouraged to support young people with. Obviously, we've kind of covered a whole host of different opportunities, from PE at home to the Daily Mile to the School Games Challenge portal. You know, so there's lots out there. I just wanted to touch on a couple more just for the last couple of minutes that you might take away as some examples to use in your school. So first up, we've got something called the Physical Activities Directory, which has been developed by Youth Sport Trust and a number of school games organisers from across the country. The idea of this is a directory of activities that's designed to help reverse the effects of COVID-19. So some of those things we were looking at the start, is how we can then kind of use physical activity in the school day and obviously encourage that physical activity at home to reverse some of those effects. So in this directory, there's kind of a list of those different effects, and it's about then schools identifying kind of specific young people, specific bubbles or classes who have perhaps been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic in a specific way. And obviously there's going to be lots of different kind of ways that young people have responded. And then it's about finding how we can kind of challenge that and help reverse that through the list of different activities that are in embedded into that directory, and that ranges from change for life activities to YST resources. There's some This Girl Can resources in there, and then there's a range of holistic approaches, things like yoga and mindfulness, that can help to address some of those mental health challenges that young people are facing. Next slide, please, Jim. This is something called Super 60 Squads, which is a Birmingham Kingsbury School Sports Partnership. So I see they're a Birmingham SGO partnership who've developed like a menu of different activities young people can do before school, after school, during school, to get them physically active. So that's working with the parents, with the home, and young people then on a Friday, they scan the QR code and then they are able to input their data and they get a certificate. And it's also something that can be done in school, in classrooms with a poster, and that encourages that activity and getting the young people to be a little bit more active and competitive with their peers and different classes in the school. Next slide, please, Jim. Many of you will be aware of the Active School Planner. It's an opportunity for you to input your information about your school day for a specific class, individual or bubble, or everything in between, and it allows you to measure your school's activity levels. So that's activeschoolplanner.org, and then you get a heat map to see where the gaps are, but also where the opportunities are to embed some more physical activity in the day. Just a couple of things I wanted to pick up on from the 10 quick wins, which you might be able to take away, potentially embed with some of your classes in the spring term. Giving children breaks. Can we find 5 minutes in a lesson or between lessons to allow young people to be physically active, to move? And then we've got number 5 there, making sure everyone's included. How can we be inclusive in that practice? Number 8 as well is that whole school approach around, making sure that every young person in the school understands that their school is an active place and they're going to be physically active, whether it's in PE or whether it's around that PE environment as well. And just finally, on the final slide, please, Jim, just a couple of other ideas that might be useful. And again, your school games organisers can support you with all of this. Change for Life clubs or clubs that are aimed at the least active. That's the school games organisers can support you with that. There's a document from Youth Sport Trust about active schools, and it's got some different activities in there that you can do in the classroom. Things like a bolt of energy, 60 seconds of activity, start of lesson, end of lesson, 10-minute shake-ups. And then, of course, there's elements around the actual curriculum and how can we check for understanding potentially by moving young people around the room. Can we have an agree or disagree continuum where young people line up and move around, and encouraging that kind of movement in the classroom, and obviously developing some physical activity in different curriculum areas such as maths, using active maths, such as English, using active English. So just a couple of ideas there to add to everything else that's been brought to the presentation today. I'm conscious of the time, so I'll not say any more. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of 60 active minutes. I'll pass you back to Jim. Thanks, everyone.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. I think Matt said it really well there, when particularly looking at the challenges and the opportunities around physical activity on the back of lockdown, and generally is that all the opportunities that have been shared today really help combat those challenges and provide those different opportunities to reach different kind of pupils in our schools. So if you are one of those schools looking to do something a little bit different for the physical activity and health and well-being of your kids, then the people who presented today can all help you with that. And it's great that a lot of these things have been born in Birmingham. They've been built in Birmingham for Birmingham kids. I don't think we've got any more questions coming in. So just to close, thank you very much to our presenters today. It's been great to hear what's been going on. You will get a copy of the slides sent out. You'll also get a link to the recording. So if you do have colleagues in different schools, or even in schools, your head teachers who you think would benefit from hearing some of the messages today, then you'll be able to get access to that link. There's a lot of links that have been spoken about today, a lot of useful websites. So what we'll also do on the final slide of the slides you'll get, there'll be a bit of a repository of all the links and the questions and answers that have been gone through the chat function. Okay. Again, thank you very much. Thanks for all your hard work with the children of Birmingham, working tirelessly through this current pandemic. We'll be on the call for a few more minutes if there's any questions, but please feel free to go. Thank you very much, guys.